we have him?
Brian, are you on the line? Good night.
Hey, Brian.
Brian, you hearing us?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Sorry about that.
Hey, good night, Brian Lewis. Welcome to Gameplan.
The Game Plan.
You're on U97.5 Multicultural Radio.
And Brian, I know you have multiple phones. Please have your attorney on the next line.
Brian, it's not that kind of show.
Hey, good night, sir. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's, you know.
I just wanted to extend congratulations to yourself and the rest of the Trinidad and Tobago athletic community, all the Olympians, and you as our fearless leader. You know, I just want to show my appreciation as a Trinidad and Tobago sports fan for the work that you've been doing.
Brian, this man is trying out.
I know that
you're
you're coming down to the end of your term, and I just want to say thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. At least I know I have one fan.
You do. You do have more than one fan. I'm sure you have a couple. Brian, let's talk about the Olympic team, biggest ever, and with the largest contingent of women. Just briefly, what are your thoughts on it, and looking forward to Tokyo?
Yeah, it's 33 athletes in all, 20 men and 13 women. It's in terms of numbers, it's the largest women in an Olympic contingent. Last time, I think it's 12 women in Beijing. The largest delegation would have been Rio, 31. So it's good in terms of the circumstances. In terms of coming down to the end, there, so originally we had selected an approved city, but we had some changes in that,
All right.
It's 24 hours, but it's good. I mean,
You're happy with it?
To see the athletes. Well, I'm ready for the athletes. I mean, regardless, they have persevered through a very incredibly difficult 16 months with the Olympics being delayed and all the various challenges presented by COVID-19. So, for them, I mean, it's been tough for some of those whose qualification chances and opportunities may have been impacted by the COVID-19. So I spare thought for them, but yeah.
A big part of what has excuse me, a big part of what has been happening with the Tokyo Olympics is a bit of what Chris was talking about earlier on, the politics behind it. Right now we're seeing in Japan, they're about to go into a lockdown. Not quite it's a state of emergency situation, not quite a full lockdown, but certainly how would this newest latest news affect what we have planned for the Olympics over in Tokyo?
Well, I mean, it's not. The Japan government, they I don't have to say they've taken bold step of not, given what has happened in the last couple of months, they have taken the bold step of pressing on with hosting the Tokyo 2020 games rescheduled. And they have put in place various measures, and they're gonna. I've seen they've called a state of emergency, but what quasi state of emergency, whatever. But they intend to press on with the games, so the games will be held in the context of a state of emergency. Yeah. People have different views on that, but from the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee perspective, we are satisfied that in terms of the biosecure bubble that they have and all the different countermeasures, it's extremely stringent and restrictive. That it's going to be a biosecure bubble.
All right.
But you can't.
Part of those restrictions affected us directly in the fact that we would have had to cancel our pre-games camp. How do you think that specifically would affect our chances of some of the podium-ready athletes?
Well, for the track and field contingent, it's always good for them to have that, last 2 weeks or so to fine-tune and build that team spirit and chemistry in terms of the relays. Of course, we couldn't have that, as I said, because, of course, the safety and health of our delegation was an absolute non-negotiable.
Indeed.
So that there were some things that, they for Saki Town, which was supposed to be the site of the thing, they just didn't put in place. And we mutually agreed, along with the Japan embassy, that we, in the best interest of the team, that we not have a training camp. So there will be some impact, but at the end of the day, COVID-19 has turned a lot of things upside down, and we have to be realistic. I mean, people have lost their lives, and so you take what is before you in terms of the realities on the ground, and that's the focus. You have to focus on the controllables, and what you can't control, you leave that for those who have to deal with that.
Right. One of the things that we've really come to recognize is that the COVID situation has exposed some of the fragilities and inefficiencies in the Trinidad and Tobago sporting complex, the matrix of the athletes, the administrators, the NSOs, the federations, sports governance policy. We starting to understand that, like for instance, only cricket early in the dance with the CPL, they had that opportunity to compete, and then everything else was, there was a godfather approach by the health policy, but it exposed a lot of fragility in the systems. How I know that the TTOC was leading a lot of administrative, educational policy and training and trying to bolster some of that. But in your opinion, I think the last year and a half, what has it taught us about where we're at in terms of that sports governance, the federations, the athlete themselves? I put you on the spot here, I know, but I wanna hear what you honestly feel
on the
like.
spot. The reality is that COVID-19 has exposed a lot. I mean, I'm involved in business, and it has exposed the fragility in business, the economic and financial model. It has exposed fragility in the health sector. There's no aspect of life, both here and internationally, that has not been laid bare by this COVID-19 pandemic. So sport is no exception. You see globally, and the Olympics fall into that, in terms of the big global sports industry, which is a $600 billion U.S. industry, whether it be Formula One, Euro Championships, NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, Major League Baseball, they found their way to press on, because it's an industry. People's lives and careers depend on it, livelihoods, and they found their way to do just like any industry, be the oil sector, the energy sector, technology, to keep going. What is that done in the context of Trinidad and Tobago is, of course, exposed that our structures in terms of sport, the infrastructure, it's still very much amateur and recreational, and therefore, that structure, that infrastructure, that ecosystem has not stood up very well to the harsh realities of COVID-19. So that's the fact.
All right, Brian, one last question before you go. And I know you're passionate about this. Rule 50, the IOC has stated that they will relax athlete protest and at the Olympic Games. Just give me briefly your thoughts on what has now transpired, because it seems to be it was definitely a battle to get even to this level, and some level of acceptance by the IOC of the fact that athletes can protest, or there's the infringement on their human rights. So just give us a briefly.
Yeah, well, the IOC is doing in their conservative, Eurocentric, white male patriarchy way. They're doing what they feel needs to be done incrementally, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that Rule 50 is a legacy of Avery Bunge, a racist and anti-Semitic leader, and that Rule 50 was established to oppress the civil rights movement and the protest action of the mainly African American athletes in between that period, 1968 and 1972. And, you know, so, yeah, they felt they ticked the box in their way, but the whole challenge of anti-blackness and systemic and institutional racism and racial discrimination in the global sports and Olympic movement wouldn't change and wouldn't be toppled by mere window dressing and fiddling with, you know, the rules. They have not acknowledged the racist genesis of Rule 50. They haven't rescinded the Olympic light ban on Vince Matthews and Wayne Collett, so it may be satisfactory to many others, but
it's not to you.
It's not satisfactory. There's still a long way to go.
I'm hearing you. Brian, I want to thank you so very much for taking this call. I want to thank you for being our actual first guest. Guest number one.
Yeah, and Brian, when you're having some of that Tokyo sushi, you know, call my name, my brother.
Thank you very much, man. It's nice to be an honor and a privilege, and I wish you all best of luck with your new program. So
chances are when you're in Tokyo, we're going to call you.
I also collect fridge magnets, I'm just saying. Just in case, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm telling you now, we're going to call you when you're in Tokyo.
Hey, safe journey, my brother.
Safe journey. All right.
No problem.
That was Brian Lewis